Jolly good. Are we live? Oh, we're live. Was that banter live? That would have been great to catch that name banter.
Don't oversell the banter. It was mild banter.
I'm setting up too
Nothing
much
but
banter.
professionalism here, right?
Yeah. Hello, and welcome to this EGX Res session on Steam Wishlists. I'm Alice Bell from Rock Paper Shotgun, and I'm joined today by Paul from Mode 7 Games and by Kane from CoatSync. And, you know, we're going to talk about Steam Wishlists. Steam Wishlists. What are they about, you know?
Oh, that's really the first question. Okay.
Well, I mean, I was going to throw to your audience and say how many of you do actually habitually use your Steam wishlists?
That's a lot of people. That's good.
About half of you. Yeah, that's pretty good. Well, Paul, I know you've said before that for Mode 7, wishlists have been, at least of late, have been really useful for you.
Yeah, so the main reason that wishlists are useful in terms of launching a game is that they provide kind of a good endpoint for your pre-release marketing. So people are able to actually make a commitment to say that they might want to purchase your game, and it gives you numerical feedback on that. I think it's quite easy when you're kind of launching a game or announcing a game to just go on lots of kind of qualitative measures of sort of how nice people are being about it, maybe things like trailer views, sort of things that are kind of easier to get that create a nice warm fuzzy feeling, but the wishlists actually give you a kind of hard metric that you can look at in order to kind of, you know, base potentially future things on. And they can be quite significant in terms of bringing your game to Valve's attention, which is obviously tremendously hard to do now because there's a million, billion, zillion games launching every day. That's a very precise stat there. So all of those factors together mean that they're a good end point for your marketing. And Kane, I believe you were thinking of talking a little bit about the other, you know, how to encompass wish lists within everything else that you might be doing.
I mean, yeah, so just to add to what you said there, Paul, like your wish lists are essentially a way whilst you're coming soon before launch to kind of get that purchase intent. Age and the amount of people that wish list gives you some kind of metrics to work on with how much money to put into your various acquisition campaigns around the whole kind of getting people to that Steam page. And I suppose the main point that I would say about Steam wish lists is they're only one part of the plan. Getting them to the page and then impressing them is just as important as the wish lists. So make sure that you don't put all the eggs in the wish list basket.
I think it was Jake Burkett from Grey Alien Games did an article on Gama Sutra where he had talked to other devs about their wish list numbers, and it seems like the conversion to sales rate from wish lists can kind of be up and down all over the place between sort of like 3% and 30%. So what do you think as devs you can do to kind of push that as high as you can?
I mean, there's multiple ways you can kind of attack it. You can have launch discount, which often gets you sometimes gets you CRM help from Valve. And of course, if your game's already out and they're still on the wish list, adding a discount of a certain percentage for a certain length of time sometimes gets you an email out from Valve. I'm sure if you've got a wish list yourself, you've had those emails, such and such a game is on sale. And kind of talking about conversion, very often with PC gamers, they're very value-driven. You have your trigger points as to what you think you'll pay for a game. I know I do. I will wishlist a game and think, when it hits a certain price, that's when I'll buy it. So yeah, thinking about how to maximize those sales but not cut off your profit margin in order to convert those wish lists is also key. So do your market research as to what you think the trigger point is for people playing the game.
Can I just ask, is everyone here, are you all developers? Anyone here not a developer? Aspiring, okay.
That's a developer.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think about what's going to be most useful to talk about in terms of this for people who are perhaps starting out or trying to figure out marketing for the first time. I think one thing to say probably is that, you know, we've been going since 2005 and I'm still learning about marketing and about trying to develop the way that we do marketing in order to kind of produce the best bang for buck. There's someone sitting over there, Cliff Harris, who is another indie developer, and he's given me a lot of advice, particularly around Facebook ads. So one of the things that I think everyone eventually will be doing, and a lot of people are already doing, is using targeted Facebook ads to drive traffic to Steam, to get the Steam wish lists up prior to launch. And this is going to be, because the front page of Steam is now sort of a lost cause in some ways in terms of your ability to control what happens with it. This is kind of now the battleground of attention is sort of more on Facebook and on some of those other platforms, social platforms, in order to get people to the wish list. And where Cliff's advice has been tremendously helpful to me is around, he's trying to hide, is around targeting Facebook advertising so as to reach a relevant audience, just to bring the cost of that down. And that sort of, to me, in my mind, that's directly related to Wishlists, and it feels a bit like paying one algorithm to feed another algorithm, which can get slightly depressing at times. But also, it's extremely effective, and it's also a way of making your advertising actually relevant to people, which is always the best kind of advertising. I don't know if you guys do much of that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, I mean, especially for indie games, you've got to try and keep your costs of advertising low. So, kind of expanding upon the Facebook advertising. It's much cheaper than alternatives like Twitter. So Facebook is a good way to go, depending on the audience. If it's especially if it's adults in the standard demographic, that's perfectly fine. But in terms of getting that cost down on Facebook and targeting people, what I would say is the rest of your marketing plan should come to some kind of point where you can track it. Usually a website. Install your pixel from Facebook so that every person that comes to your website, whether it's from social media or any other avenue, they're essentially tracked on there, and you can then create an audience on Facebook only targeting those people. So they've already been to your website, say 2 months ago, you're ready to launch and you put that Facebook advert out there, they're already aware in their minds of your product, and you're just kind of bringing them back when the game's ready to be purchased. You can also create lookalike audiences to expand upon those people. So if you've only got 1,000 people that visited your website, you can use Facebook to kind of expand beyond that. And again, getting people to your Steam page, as many as people that are interested as possible, and either add to wish list because they think it's slightly too expensive for their trigger point, or if it's on sale and they're happy, make that purchase right there.
What do you think about routing people from Facebook sort of through your own site and then onto Steam? Would that be like your preferred funnel, I guess is the term?
Funnel, marketing terms.
Sorry.
Making me sound all corporate. It really does depend. I wouldn't say you just go with one approach. Doing both approaches and A/B testing and seeing what's cheapest and most effective is probably the best way. What you're missing out if you direct people from your advert to Steam is you can't then retarget them back in to Facebook. If you send them to your website and your website clearly then links through to your Steam page, you're getting double whammy there. You're getting the ability to retarget them later, and also hopefully getting them to your Steam page where they can make that wish list at the same time.
I think maybe also one thing to talk about is to sort of, you do get into that kind of more corporate-y marketing stuff with this, and I think some people are a bit uncomfortable with Facebook, and that's not your fault. I mean, generally. But I think one thing that you can do is something that you should be doing during your marketing is actually kind of creating content around your game that's interesting, that is bringing value to people, that's actually good, not just sort of spammy traditional advertising. And then what you can do with Facebook is, if you're bringing that to their attention, you're actually giving them something useful, or something entertaining, or something interesting, or something that's going to bring them into a community. So I think there are ways that you can do it if you have that ability to send them through to your site, and your site's geared up well enough to make sure you're getting wish lists off the back of that, so you're hitting your end target as well. Then on the way there are actually sort of some productive things that you can do with advertising that's not just the sort of cynical, overly attention-grabbing stuff. Because it's Facebook, like, people are either going to click on something from one of their friends that's really relevant to them, that's going to, give them a big emotional response, or they're going to click on your advert. So if you're not doing something that has value, then they'll ignore you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, agreed.
Paul, I know you've said that, because you recently did a post on Medium, was it like 10 secrets to indie game development, and why they don't exist? And you mentioned there that you could talk a lot about Steam wish lists, because they have been helpful for you, but you were hesitant to because that can easily change very quickly. Right.
I think that's one issue with. So I was trying to write a post that would be useful to people making games in 3 or 4 years, and there are a lot of really, really good marketing posts out there, and I tried to link to some when I was writing that as well, about tactics that you can use now and sort of very specific things. And we're talking about Facebook. There's lots of generic advice and things you can look up about Facebook. But I think one of the core things when you're approaching marketing is to look at what's working now, but also to look at what is the traditional advice that you can generalize and then apply to the specific systems that are out there now. So just because you're using Facebook, because it's Steam Wishlist, that doesn't mean you have to throw out all of the knowledge and practice that marketers have been doing for years and years and years. There's still a lot that you can gain from reading traditional books about advertising and marketing, and there's a lot of really, really good information out there. So that was kind of the idea behind that, was to not see it as a kind of magic bullet. It's not. You do get people who are really good at tactically exploiting certain things, like if Instagram ads are really cheap for a while, they'll pile into Instagram or Snapchat or something like that. And that's great. That can be a really useful skill in a marketing team, is to find those. They're basically exploits. But overall, I think there are some kind of perennial truths that are a bit more useful.
I mean, yeah, like you say, there is times when you can do those kind of things, but like if you're going to use these skills and these kind of approaches moving forward and be able to A/B test them and then draw conclusions from it from your future marketing campaigns, it's probably best to go with the general approach, apply a method, see how it works, apply another method, does that work better, and then start to make learnings about what the kind of audience that's looking for the kind of games that you make are looking for. Is that a video piece? Is that a static image? Is that a competition? Find what works best for your audience. Gamers are a very diverse crowd, especially in the PC space. So when you've found there's something that resonates very well with the kind of audience you're looking for, kind of then drill down into that kind of approach and then refine it even further. And you'll start to see better or cheaper results as you go along.
You've both talked so far about how a wish list is only kind of one piece of the puzzle, as it were. Do you think there's a danger of people maybe zeroing in on them more because they are a firm metric that they can kind of grasp onto?
I think, yeah, it's easy to get tunnel vision with stuff like that. I mean, I know I certainly did kind of the weeks up to launch. You're really like trying to get, can I get 1,000 more? Can I get 1,000 more? And I think that's good in a way because it means you're very focused, but also, yeah, too much tunnel vision is bad.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it's a metric. It shows a purchase intent, but it doesn't necessarily translate into sales. A game I've worked on in the past had 30,000 wish lists, but then it never converted. And the reason potentially for that was the price of the game or the platform of the game. So wish lists don't equal money. They just equal somebody showing that they're interested in your title. So it comes back to it could be anything like, oh, this game looks interesting, but I'm a French native speaker and this game isn't in French. I might wishlist it now in the hopes that they announce French localization later. And if that never happens, I'm never going to convert. So it's about looking at that metric and then converting it. If it doesn't convert, try to think about why. Is it too expensive? Does it not work on their hardware because the specifications are too high? Or have you put the wrong minimum requirements on your game so that people have tried it and then refund it subsequently because they get 10 FPS. These are all the kind of things that you should sit down and analyze your wishlist numbers. Is it going down because you're making sales, or is it going down because you're seeing deletions, and then trying to fix the problem and increase your conversion?
Yeah, contextualizing it's really important because it is a very broad measure as well as being useful. So you've got to kind of find the exact place for it. You mentioned Jake Burkett's post, which I think is really good, and everyone should read that. But that really does show you the variance in those numbers. Particularly, there's a stat that he extrapolates from. He tried to extrapolate the amount of organic sales you'll also get based on. So he had the wish list conversions, which I think he generally said assume 10%. Right. And that sort of generally holds true for us. So I think that's a really good starting point. If you look at your wish list, assume 10% of that in the first week. But then beyond that, I think his stat was 30% of the wish list number will be roughly equivalent to your sort of organic sales in the week. And I think, like, I need to talk to him about this, but I find that's super vague. I mean, he does put lots of disclaimers in the post, but I think just be a bit wary of. It's so tempting to look at a post like that, and he wouldn't want you to do this, but it's so tempting to look at it and then just plug those numbers into your spreadsheet and be like, this is going to happen in week 1, it's great. And it's never like that. There are so many variables that are going to come in. Things like you've mentioned localization and also people refunding the game, being unhappy with it. Those are the kind of bases that you also have to put those hats on and really think about that stuff as well as just your wish list, as well as just your straightforward kind of conversions. Yeah. And
very often people won't tell you why they're unhappy. Especially British people, they'll just be disgruntled with your product and say, "Oh yeah, it's great, no, there's no problems," and then kind of walk off and refund the game. So it's about trying to dig into it. If you've got a Discord community or a social media presence, dig into those kind of or at least do searches for your game on social media, even if they've not tagged you specifically because they're disgruntled. They might be talking smack about your game, and it's something you can do about it, which then improves your kind of like sales over time.
I think the thing that I've really struggled with in a small team is building like a really good routine to do marketing. It tends to be something that you try and slot in like when you have time, and often there are points in development when no one has any time at all. So trying to establish a kind of healthy, regular routine of doing marketing and looking through all of that stuff and just paging through all these different areas and sort of touching on each of them is absolutely the best thing to do. Even if you're a solo developer or really, really small team, just build in the time to do it.
Yeah, have your list of things that you think you're going to try and achieve ready, so that you're only spending minimal time. If you are a 1 or 2 person team, kind of set aside some time, have your list of things that you're going to go through and just do that habitually, rather than trying to do bits here and there. Sometimes that's not as fruitful as having a plan and going through and dedicating one day of the month to kind of find answers to those questions.
Also challenge your assumptions when you're doing those things. Just because you're a small team, it doesn't mean that you can't, try some of the tactics that larger companies would do. So we published a game called Tokyo 42 last year, and one of the things we did with that was make a small documentary about the team. And we kind of followed them through a day working on the game. We had them kind of coming to see us and then sort of showing us their work, and we filmed all of that. And some parts of that worked and some didn't. But it was actually, we got about 30,000 YouTube views on that one video, which was pretty good. And if we'd managed to kind of keep that going more, I think it would have been nice to sort of build that up. That was the plan originally, but we kind of ran out of time, went to other things. So it just shows like you can try a sort of tactic, but if you don't have the routine in place to sort of build on it, then you might lose out a little bit. But just don't be afraid of trying different things and experimenting. I think is always a good thing to do, because something might surprise you in terms of how well it works.
Yeah, try different things, and then, like say, just refine what does work for that particular game and audience. Like habitually is kind of the thing. Yeah.
I feel bad. I feel like I should drag this back to Steam Wishlists specifically. Steam Valve and Steam keep changing, like adding to wish lists and like changing them up and how they could be used and stuff, and making them more specific so that the player, the end user, can just filter it all different ways and stuff. How much do you think they are also interested in making it work for developers? Because one of the things, like the reason it's difficult to contextualize it and pin down numbers is because there aren't really any, and they're not really, transparently shared.
I would say Valve have put that tool in kind of as is, to be used however you see fit. They don't have an agenda behind it. It's mainly a tool that can be used as the developer, and it's kind of on you to make an interesting store page that kind of has the call to action to the wish list. In order to drive that there, towards the top of your description, you should kind of be looking to have a call to action to that, so that people initially see the video pre-rolling, the basic blurb to the side, and then if they're generally interested, they should just click it. There's no commitment there initially. It's just clicking a button. I don't think there's any agenda. Obviously, if you get a lot of wish lists, and that gets the attention of Valve account managers, and if you manage that, well done. Enjoy being on the front page and being a millionaire. But very often that's not the case, so it's more just a tool for you guys to use and kind of like make sure that you've impressed them once before they've got to your page, and then more importantly, impress them once they're there. Make it look like it's a game that somebody can get invested in and make that purchasing decision for. If it's not already out, the wish list is the purchase intent, which is what you're looking for.
I think that's a super good point, and also kind of relevant to what you were saying about how much Valve changed things. I think your approach with that really should be to make it obvious that you are putting in the work, you're putting in the effort, and you're not expecting Valve to do anything for you. And if you do that and it's working, then you will be able to get their attention and you will be able to communicate with them. And when you get to that point of being able to communicate with them, Valve fundamentally want everyone to do well on their platform. I think there are a lot of misconceptions about Valve, certainly in the development community. I think that if you can demonstrate to them that what you're doing is worthwhile, and then you talk to them, you'll really see the benefits of that, because they'll be able to tell you what the features are that they're thinking of bringing through. They want developers' opinions on what they're doing.
Yep.
They want things to be useful, which is why I'm going to tell them that they need to make wish lists real time so I can see what's happening on the day. But I'm happy that, that's something I'm happy to talk to them about, and happy to say, like, this would be a really helpful feature. And they might say, no. But at least I think to get into that position, if you're talking about how to best understand Steam and best understand the features of Steam, they are there and they are available to talk to, and they want to communicate.
Yeah, to slightly tangent from Steam Wishlists again, I'm ever so sorry,
right.
Alice. They are trying to bring even more things to the platform that can help developers get noticed. Recently, they started the developer live streaming on pages themselves. They're very keen to have that as part of a launch campaign at the very least. So if you've got the resources to either stream it yourself during launch week or get community volunteers to stream it for you, that will get the attention of Valve. You've got a good page, you're looking to convert, you're looking to put the effort in and stream your game on their platform. These are all the things that kind of come together in order to make your game successful on Steam.
Cool.
We ran out of time.
No. We can keep going indefinitely if you want.
It's fine by me. I like sitting down.
It's good, isn't it? Yeah. One last thing I did want to mention is that in the article that Jake Burkett did, I keep bringing it back to the article, he mentioned that a Valve representative said to aim for 50,000, which seems like just a huge number of wish lists to aim for most devs.
Yeah, it's big, but I think that was said really to give people a target and to make them not stop resting on their laurels when you get there. Like, we've done a couple of games that have been 20, and I've kind of wanted to get up higher than that and sort of not managed it. But so I think 50 is, if you can hit 50, then I think you're really going to be going somewhere.
Yeah, but again, it doesn't necessarily convert to sales, so don't look at 50 and go, dust your hands and go, job's done. Job's done. We'll just launch the game now and it'll be a success. But yeah, that's kind of like a baseline for them to pick up and take notice and potentially reach out to you with some kind of amplification on their side, because like you said, Paul, there's a billion games on there. They've got to kind of sift through, and they can only give time to a certain amount of developers. If you can hit those baselines, then you might get extra support, which is even better for visibility.
One thing I think is worth doing as well is look through games that are coming up on Steam and look at what they're doing, and maybe some of the ones that are getting a bit more attention or a bit more store placement, and then see what their pages are like and look at what their marketing's like. Are they managing to get builds out to YouTubers really early? Have they managed to build some of their own buzz around that? And you will see some of that reflected. So those will be the ones who potentially have the higher wishlist numbers that Valve's sort of looking for. But I wouldn't be intimidated by that number. As you say, like, the conversion is going to be different. Every game is going to be looking to aim for a different scale. There's no point kind of killing yourself trying to aim for a level of wishlist that you just can't get. There is still a level of attention that's going to come, especially if it's your first game or your second game. That attention is going to come at launch, especially from press. A lot of sites now won't cover games they haven't heard of pretty much until launch in some instances. So do be aware of that, and don't get discouraged, I would say, by that number.
And one last thing, I suppose, from me is don't be afraid to reach out to Valve. If they don't know about your game and you're not willing to tell them about it, they can't help you. So the worst that can happen when you send them as an email is they don't reply. But if you at least put it on their radar, then it's within their mental space, and if they think they have the time and your game is worth it, they will try their best to give you some support. Whether that's a featuring on one of the hubs or whether that's front page, they do genuinely care and want everybody to succeed, because their business is your business succeeding at the same time.
And all of this comes back to the quality of what you're making. If you're not making something that people don't want to play, it doesn't matter how much of this other stuff you do. It comes back to your product and who is going to be interested in buying it, and is it relevant to people. You're just going to make your life so much easier if you have that starting point. And that's something that, again, that will catch the attention of press, it will catch the attention of Valve, and all of these things are always cumulative.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. I'm gonna challenge Annika, start blast from the past. That, isn't it? Run down and take some questions from the audience. If you have any, just raise your hand and I'll come with the mic. Brilliant. We've got some. Go,
really
right in the
keen,
front.
wow.
It's great.
Thank you. So for pre-launch marketing, Wishlist is like one call to action that you have. Then you have join our Discord, follow us on Facebook, sign up for our newsletter. How have you prioritized these recently, and why?
For us, it depends on what we can commit to. Again, it comes down to bandwidth. In my team, it's a three-person dedicated marketing team, but there's still a finite bandwidth there. So I would say, in terms of your call to actions, Wishlist is an easy one because it's one click of a button. But from our perspective at CodeSync, it's a case of if you can commit to giving the level of service within those actions to the customer, great. If you can't, if you're not going to check the Discord for 3 weeks because you're busy making the game, that can actually be more harmful because people will be talking about how non-responsive you are as a developer. So I would say pick the ones that you can commit to and do a good job of, and that should be enough. It's better to do 2 things well than 4 things averagely.
I think for us, we've been trying to move generally towards Wishlist and Steam community a bit more. I think one of our weaknesses was doing sort of forum style stuff, and being really active in Steam community is actually, starting to pay dividends, sort of, especially post-launch actually. So we kind of moved that way. We used to do just purely email all the time, but I think you've probably seen, email open rates just kind of go down and down and down year on year, and it's difficult to do email marketing that works. Especially if you're trying to do regular updates on email, because it's intrusive and people don't necessarily want it at the time they're checking their email, and there's various other factors. But it's still good to have because it's the direct route. So I think, for us, we've been prioritizing Wishlists and community, but those other things are really important.
Is there a known correlation between the positive reviews that a game gets after release, even if it's during an open beta phase, and the amount of wish lists that actually convert to purchases?
Do you mean Steam reviews?
Within the client. Just as a more reliable metric.
Yeah, I mean, reviews are more important post-launch, and making sure that you're in that magic 70% plus so that you're in the mostly positive category. That's kind of a key thing. I think they moved the goalposts on what counts as mixed not that long ago. So for a lot of gamers, seeing mixed and orange is like danger. This is, maybe I don't want this game. So trying to get into that magical, mostly positive section is good. When people see blue, they know that it's been a positive reviewed game. And from a perspective of getting that percentage up, addressing those reviews directly by replying to them, which is something you can do from your developer account, that's sometimes invaluable in getting somebody who'd left you a negative review to flip it to positive. And it shows that you're willing to engage with the customer directly as a developer. I've had games in the past that have changed themselves from mixed to mostly positive, and then as soon as you hit that wonderful blue figure, good things start to happen with the game.
I haven't seen any specific research that could give you, an actual kind of numerical correlation. I mean, maybe we should get Jake on that as well. It's the kind of thing that he likes doing. But I definitely say, for games that we have that are higher rated, you just do much better in discount sales, and that's a really good indicator that wishlists are converting. If your game has better Steam reviews, it's going to sell more. I mean, there's a level to which that would need to be empirically demonstrated, but I feel really confident saying that as just a straight-up statement.
Magically switch sides. Someone else.
Hi. We didn't understand the significance of Steam wishlists until it was too late for our PR campaign. So we started doing it about 2 weeks before launch, and we only managed to launch with about 1,000 on our wish list. So my question is, post-launch, is wishlist a lost cause, or is it still a number we should be tracking, still a button we should be convincing our audience to press?
I think it's worth looking at. It seems to be really noisy after launch, to me. I mean, it seems like people will add it for so many different reasons after launch, whereas before it's sort of a clearer purchase intent. I've just made that up. It just feels like that to me.
I mean, once your game's out, you have a price, you have a purchase button. People are either, most times people will either want to buy it or not at that point. Some people will wishlist it thinking, well, that's slightly higher than I'm willing to pay, but I'll add it to my wish list for future reference for a summer sale or a Christmas sale. So it's definitely not a lost cause, but I would kind of arc my marketing plan around trying to get people around the idea that there's an upcoming sale, which then, if people aren't willing to pay full price for as standard when they visit your Steam page, they know there's an impending sale, which makes it worth them adding to their wish list, ready to hit that trigger point, whether it's 20% or 30% off.
The thing we're trying to do more post-launch is just actually talk to the community every day and listen to what they're saying and show them like what our ongoing development is. You know, next week the patch is going to be this on this day, and we're trying to aim for this, but we might miss it. As soon as you start actually communicating with people, you'll just find that they become a lot more helpful and a lot more. It's so easy to get into a combative, difficult relationship with particularly like your Steam community, because people are really vocal and aggressive on there, and they do not care about your feelings. So but the way to turn that around is to talk to them more, and then you'll see. That's the thing to focus on post-launch, I think. Because if people are thinking of buying the game and they check out the community and they see the developers active in there, that's going to make a really, really big difference to them. So I would say that's a good thing to focus on, as well as looking at your post-launch wishlist numbers.
Yeah, I think that's probably better than the advice that I gave.
Okay, thank you.
Brilliant. Any more questions for Paul? Okay, there we go. Oh, brilliant. We've got loads. Okay.
Hi. So if you launch the game in early access and you gain a wish list because it's much more visible on Steam, does it matter at launch when you launch the game after early access?
I mean, I think it's going to be a factor. It's certainly going to be a factor because a lot of people will be waiting for 1.0. That's definitely a known thing. I mean, I talked to one developer who said he was kind of looking at parity between his early access launch and his full launch, and that he'd talked to other developers who'd had similar sales boost at the early access launch to the one when you launch 1.0. I don't know if that matches up with any early access stuff you've done. Again, it's super variable, all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, early access is a different, kind of strategy entirely. But what I would say is that the people that, first of all, I would say if you're going for an early access launch where Valve ask you to put in the reasons for early access and stuff like that, don't overpromise and be entirely transparent, because those early access investors as such are going to be so passionate about your game and so vocal that you can win an entire community that are going to rally around your product and then become the kind of gatekeepers for other people to come in at launch. If you can get them on side through transparency and delivering what you say you're going to deliver, you'll have an army of people willing to be ambassadors for your product. And then, you can then weave that into Discord and grow it from there. I've seen a few examples of where that has taken a game that didn't have any visibility and make it a financial success. So no overpromising and transparency, and again, communication with your community of potential and customers.
Yeah, I mean, but I think broadly, wish lists are going to be important from early access to 1.0. I think it's something that you still need to be paying a lot of attention to, even though you've got sales coming in at the same time. So just as like everything with early access, like you just got to keep juggling everything.
Yeah. And I have one more question. It's okay. So after you launch it, and let's say you have 1,000 wish lists, and magically after 3 months you have like 100K. Will Steam feature you after that?
Only Lord Gaben knows the answer to that question.
If
there's
that
no
happened, probably, because that would be some kind of insane aberration. Like you'd have got some amazing YouTube, or like you somehow optioned your movie rights or something. Something would have happened. I mean, Valve pay attention to. They're just very in touch with what's happening on Steam. They look at the Steam metrics.
You're at that kind of scale, then they'd probably be paying attention. Yeah. It depends what your product is.
But the question was if you can get a feature after the launch.
Can you get featured on the Steam store after launch? Yeah, of course, definitely. Like games that are like live titles that have big updates, then you'll get featured in front page if Valve consider it to be the right thing to do. So yes, for sure.
There's visibility rounds, right? That's still a thing, isn't it?
That's something that, as developers, you have control over those. When you make an update to your game, you can launch a visibility round. But in general, yes, you can get support and featuring, and the magical pop-up when Steam opens. That is all available post-launch. It depends on what you're doing with your product.
I'd say look at those titles that are doing well ongoing, and like see what happens to those. Like there's plenty of games that have like a big ongoing community and they keep it rolling, and you can see what Steam's doing to to boost those, to promote those.
Yeah. But if for some reason you had 100K wish lists and nothing was forthcoming, email them and say, hey, we've got 100,000 wish lists. Maybe it skipped your radar because there was 14 AAA releases coming out. We just want to let you know. And then I'm sure you get an email back pretty quickly with how they can help amplify your game.
Did you have a question in front of me?
So my question was a little bit the same as the other guys, but how important are wish lists for a free-to-play game? Say if you launch into early access, you've got wish lists and you're about to launch free-to-play.
I've never worked on a free-to-play game, but I wouldn't think that there would be any difference particularly. I mean, obviously you're not going to be correlating them straight to purchases, but if they're a sign of intent to play something, then they're going to be important, and they're still going to be as important in terms of your general visibility within the store.
Yeah, I've worked on free-to-play, but nothing that's kind of been like coming soon, early access, and then launched. So that's an interesting question. I would have thought that, yeah, wishlist is an intent, and free-to-play has no barrier to entry other than having the time to download the game. Free-to-play is a different kind of angle because your monetization is within game rather than at point of sale. But yeah, again, as a broad metric, I would say wish lists for a game that's coming out as free-to-play soon is a good indication of the kind of acquisition you're going to have at launch. And for a free-to-play game, acquisition at launch and keeping those players and keeping your churn rate low is what's going to make or break your free-to-play game.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't think you'd be going wrong if you used it as a kind of how well is our UA going to do initially metric. I really don't think you'd have a problem basing it on that.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more question? So you talked before about using Facebook ads to kind of direct people to your Steam store. Facebook is kind of like the younger generation. People aren't really more on it anymore. Are there any other ways to kind of like direct your potential customers, like Twitter or something like that, I guess?
I think there's a slight misconception about the extent to which younger people have left Facebook. I think younger people do still use Facebook. They may not use it with the intensity and regularity that they use Instagram or Snapchat, but they are still on there. Maybe they're using it to like stay in touch with their uncle or whatever. So there is something there to just be a bit wary of those kind of trends. But sure, I mean, games have done really well with Instagram. There's a game by a friend of ours called Pumped BMX, which is a BMX-based mobile game, and almost all of his marketing was Instagram because that's where the audience of people who like BMX biking is. And he just made loads of great content. He was going out and talking to professional BMXers and getting them to kind of play the game and doing little videos with them, and just brilliant content for Instagram. And he got a really big following on there, and it really helped him drive sales. So yeah, if your particular audience is, you can ask them. You can ask them and find out specifically where they are. I'm sure it's possible to do some interesting stuff with Twitter as well. The Facebook as a platform is really sort of nicely mature now, and you're really able to, like, if something isn't working on Facebook, it's pretty much likely to be your fault, as I found out. Whereas, yeah.
Yeah, to kind of like, I'm sure you've seen the headlines about the younger demographic going down on Facebook. That's more from an investor's point of view on the stock price of Facebook, more so than the actual numbers being scarily declining. When you're advertising on Instagram, generally you'll be doing it through Facebook ads anyway. That's part of the audience network that Facebook owns. And if you're worried about it, like, you can literally tune your kind of advert and say, right, I only want people between these ages and these locations, and it'll tell you a number. And if that number's too low for you within the audience network of Facebook, which covers a broad range, then look elsewhere. But generally speaking, when I've punched my numbers in for a younger audience with an advert set that's directed at a younger audience, I've never seen numbers that make me think, oh, I need to look elsewhere. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be looking at things like Snapchat, Twitter, and other avenues. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about the younger audience on Facebook. It's still there, but yeah, it's not the same regularity. But it'll still work, and Instagram's plugged into it anyway.
Cool, thank you. Does anyone else have any more questions? You sure? Last chance. You might regret it. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming to this Res session today. I hope you had a lovely and informative time. And please join me in thanking Paul from Mode 7 and Kane from CoatSync for giving us their time today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We've got more Res sessions going on tomorrow as well. Paul, in fact, will be joining me again tomorrow. I think 1:30.
I think so.
I think
hope
so. To talk about the development of Frozen. Do you say Synapse or Synapse?
I say Synapse.
I say Synapse as
All
well.
Americans say Synapse.
Frozen Synapse 2, the correct way of saying it. But otherwise, thank you very much for coming to this session today. And have a great time at the expo this weekend and check out all the great games on offer. But once again, thank you very much for coming and goodbye.
Thanks.